The night air was unusually tense when I reached Jamil's house. I wasn't expecting chaos, just my class notes. Exams were near and he had borrowed them the previous week. But as I stepped up to the door, my feet froze. Inside, voices roared like thunder. The sound of a man shouting, followed by a woman crying, pierced the silence of the lane. I didn't know whether to knock or just turn back, but the pressure of exams and the urgency of getting those notes kept me standing still. Then I heard words I'll never forget. Divorce, divorce, divorce. 3 words, 3 strikes that shattered a home in seconds. Jamil's father, Sardar Sahib, stormed out the door, his face flushed red with fury. He barely looked at me as he climbed onto his motorcycle and rode off into the darkness. Behind him, Jamil stepped out. His eyes were red, not from anger, but sorrow. When he saw me, he broke down, hugging me tight. My home. It's all broken now, he whispered. I held him, silently. There was nothing I could say. After a few moments, I asked about the notes. He nodded. Come in, let's find them together. Inside, the house was filled with a strange silence, like after a storm. In the center of the courtyard, Jamil's mother sat on the ground, her hair disheveled, her face buried in her hands. She wasn't wearing a dupatta, and tears streamed down her cheeks. I had seen Auntie before, composed, elegant, soft-spoken, but today she looked like the ghost of that woman. My heart sank. I whispered to Jamil, let's comfort Auntie first. Notes can wait. He nodded and walked to the kitchen. Moments later, he returned with a glass of water and knelt beside her. I joined him, trying to help her drink. Her hands trembled. After a few sips, she looked up, confused but responsive, and then broke down completely, sobbing into her sleeves. She was a beautiful woman in her early 40s, too young to be abandoned like this. Too fragile to endure what had just happened. What could have happened between them, I wondered. What pushed Sardar Sahib to such an impulsive, irreversible step? Jamil eventually motioned for us to leave her and head to his room. We found the notes quickly, but as I packed them, I asked softly, "Are you angry at her?" He didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "I'm angry at fate." We sat side by side and studied for an hour, but my mind kept drifting back to the sobs coming from the courtyard. Jamil, however, buried himself in his books, as if ignoring the pain made it disappear. When I left that night, my chest felt heavy. I couldn't shake off the image of Auntie, alone, broken, humiliated. Divorce is never just between two people. It destroys everything around it. And I didn't know then, but this storm had only just begun. The next day was our final paper. I tried to focus, burying my thoughts beneath formulas and dates, but Jamil's silent face haunted me. He had shown up to the exam looking calm, too calm, as if nothing had happened. But something had. Something big. And it had cracked the very foundation of his home. After the paper, Jamil turned to me. "I'm leaving for my aunt's place," he said bluntly. 6 months. I won't be coming back till the semester starts again. I stared at him. "What about Auntie? You're leaving her alone?" He shook his head, not in denial, but in resignation. "She'll be fine. Dad's still there. They've split rooms. She's observing her Ida. Anyway, I can't take this place anymore." There was something cold in his tone, like someone who had closed the door on pain instead of facing it. We parted ways at the bus stop, but just before he boarded, he handed me a sealed envelope. "Give this to her tonight. Don't open it. Just give it to her." I nodded. That evening, I made my way to Jamil's house again, the letter weighing heavily in my pocket. The door was slightly open. I knocked gently. Auntie's voice came from within, fragile, anxious. "Jamil?" I stepped inside slowly. "No, Auntie, it's me, Zohaib. Jamil asked me to give this to you." Her eyes widened with worry. "Where is he? He hasn't come home. He hasn't eaten anything. I thought he'd be back after the paper." "He's safe," I said carefully. "But he's gone to his aunt's. He asked me to read this to you." She nodded silently and opened the door wider. I stepped in, feeling a strange weight in the air, as if sorrow had seeped into the walls of the house. I unfolded the letter and read, Ami, please don't try to contact me. I need space. I've had enough of this broken home, enough of watching love turn into shouting and respect into silence. I'm not running away. I'm escaping. Maybe when I return, I'll have the strength to forgive. Till then, live your life. I'll live mine. By the time I finished, her eyes were brimming. She turned away, pressing her palm against her mouth to stifle her sobs. My child, she whispered. He thinks I failed him. She sat down slowly on the floor, and I stood there, unsure of what to say or do. Then she looked up. You're his only friend, Zohaib. If he ever calls you, tell me. I just want to know if he's okay. I nodded. I promise. As I left the house that night, I felt something stir inside me. Not pity, not judgment. It was the kind of feeling you get when you know the story in front of you is much darker than it seems. And I was only just beginning to see how deep the shadows ran. 2 days passed. I didn't hear from Jamil, not a message, not a call, but I couldn't forget what his mother looked like that night, sitting on the floor clutching her son's letter like it was the last piece of her broken heart. So, after work one evening, I walked toward their house. Just to check in. Just to tell her he was okay, happy even, based on the short message I received that morning from him. The front door was half closed again. I knocked. A moment later, she opened it. Her face lit up, not with joy, but with a soft relief. You came, she said simply. I gave her Jamil's update. That he had reached safely, was staying with his Kala, and was trying to stay busy. She sighed deeply and murmured a small prayer. Then she gestured toward the sitting room. Please sit. I've made tea. It would be nice to have someone to talk to. I hesitated, unsure. But something about her loneliness made it difficult to walk away. We sat quietly for a while. She talked about Jamil's childhood, his quiet nature, his fears, his love for sketching, and how he'd stopped ever since his father began to criticize him. Then, as the silence deepened, her voice lowered. Her eyes turned heavy. Zohaib, she said without looking up. Can I trust you? I blinked. Of course. What if I told you you could help bring Jamil back? She asked, almost whispering. My heart skipped. I don't understand. She set the teacup down slowly and turned toward me. Her voice didn't shake, but something in her eyes did. If I remarry Sardar Sahib, Jamil might come home. That's all he's ever wanted. A whole family, one roof, one life. I nodded slowly. But you're divorced now. She paused, her eyes locking into mine. Which is why I need halala. The word dropped like a stone in still water. She saw the shock on my face. I don't mean to offend you, she continued. But I trust you. You're kind. You've never looked at me wrongly. You've always respected me. You're his best friend. I couldn't speak. My mind was racing. I'll give you 2 lakh rupees, she added, her voice trembling now. For your mother. For her treatment. You won't have to stay. Just help me stand again. As a woman. As a mother. I stood up, shaken. Auntie, I'm only 17. You're Jamil's mother. She looked away, her voice barely audible. I know. But I don't have anyone else. And you're my last hope. The room was silent again, but not peaceful. The air felt thick with something I couldn't name. I walked out without another word. Outside, the night was still, but inside me, a storm had begun. I didn't know what horrified me more, what she asked, or the cruel reality that maybe, just maybe, she had no one else to ask. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind drowning in questions. How could she ask me that? Was this really the only way she saw to fix everything, or was she just broken beyond repair? I'd tried telling myself it was wrong, tried convincing myself I'd imagined her desperation, But the truth was worse than any nightmare. And then morning came, and with it, disaster. Ami's health had been unstable for weeks, but that morning she collapsed, trying to get out of bed. I rushed her to the hospital, praying it wasn't serious. The doctors ran tests and gave their verdict, an aggressive kidney infection. It wasn't life-threatening yet, but if ignored, it could become fatal. We'll need to start treatment immediately, the doctor said. It won't be cheap. When I asked how much, he gave me a figure that made my heart drop. I had no savings, no relatives with money, no assets to sell, just a sick mother, and a choice I never thought I'd consider. By evening, Ami was resting in a hospital bed. She smiled weakly, told me not to worry, said Allah would find a way. But what if I was that way? I left the hospital with a tightness in my chest and walked aimlessly for hours. The streets blurred around me. I wasn't thinking, I was suffocating. When I reached home, a single thought kept repeating in my head. You can't let your mother die. And so, that night, I did something that felt like walking into fire. I returned to Jamil's house. Auntie opened the door. I didn't say a word at first. I just looked into her eyes and nodded once. Her expression softened. You're sure? I'm not doing this for money, I said firmly. I'm doing this for my Ami. Tears welled up in her eyes. She stepped back and handed me an envelope. This is the first half, 1 lakh. The other half after... I didn't want to hear it. I took the envelope and left, my hands trembling. At the hospital, I deposited the money and got Ami started on treatment. Watching her eyes fill with life again gave me momentary peace. But beneath that peace was guilt, layered, heavy, poisonous. What had I agreed to? Was this right? Was desperation enough to justify this? As I sat beside her, she held my hand and said, You've grown into a good man, Zohaib. I'm proud of you. I nearly broke down. If only she knew. Some debts are paid with money, some with pieces of the soul, and I had just mortgaged mine. A month passed. Ami's condition improved. She was discharged from the hospital with a soft smile and a weak but hopeful heart. I took her home, helped her rest, made her meals, and tried to be the son she believed I was. But I couldn't tell her the truth. How could I? The second half of the promise still loomed over me like a shadow, creeping closer by the day. I tried to delay it, tried to find another way. But Auntie, no, Nafisa Begum, remained firm. Her iddah was coming to an end. The arrangements were already in motion. She had spoken to a Malvi. 2 witnesses had been arranged. The paperwork prepared. Everything was ready. Except my heart. 2 days later, I stood outside her home again. It was night. The streets were quiet. The house was lit faintly, not with festivity, but with finality. This wasn't a celebration. It was a transaction between fate and regret. As I walked inside, Jamil's father, Sardar Sahib, sat in a corner, silent, like a defeated man. He didn't even glance at me. I didn't care to look at him either. This entire mess, this pain, this twisted solution began with him. The nikah was brief, no music. No flowers, no laughter, just a prayer, some paperwork, and a contract that felt more like a burden than a bond. When it was done, Sardar Sahib stood, nodded to the Malvi, and walked out without a word. The door clicked shut behind him. And then, it was just us. I stood frozen. My heart thudded against my ribs like a prisoner wanting to escape. She motioned toward the bedroom. I hesitated. She noticed. You're afraid, she said softly. That's okay. I didn't answer. I followed her into the room because I had nowhere else to go. I didn't feel like a husband. I felt like a stranger to my own self. Inside, she poured a glass of milk and handed it to me. Drink, she said gently. You need rest. The room was silent. No words, no intimacy, just 2 people tied together by desperation and decisions they never wanted to make. I drank the milk out of politeness, not desire, and then darkness. I don't know how or when I fell asleep, but I did. Deep, heavy, unconscious. When I woke up, the sunlight was seeping through the curtains. I sat up, confused, my body numb. She sat beside me, fully clothed, calm, watching. You slept through the night, she said. I gave you a sleeping pill. I blinked. What? She smiled faintly. Because I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't marry you for what others think halala means. Then she paused. I married you to teach someone a lesson. And with that one sentence, everything I thought I knew collapsed. The room was spinning, not from the sleeping pill, but from her words. I didn't marry you for halala, she said again, her voice steady, measured. I married you to hurt the man who broke me. I looked at her, stunned. What do you mean? Nafisa Begum turned toward the window, her eyes distant. Sardar Sahib isn't just Jamil's father. He's a monster in disguise. He wasn't always this way, but when he changed completely. She exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that carries years of pain. You see, I'm not Jamil's real mother. That revelation hit me like ice. I married his father after his real mother died. She died after years of abuse, beatings, isolation. The things he did to her, her voice cracked. He blamed her for everything, and when she finally stopped responding to his cruelty, she gave up, completely. Jamil was just 10 when she passed. I was brought in like a replacement. I was young, poor, and my mother thought marrying me to a wealthy widower was a blessing. She looked at me then, eyes brimming but fierce. It wasn't. It was a life sentence. I couldn't speak. For years, I tolerated it. The shouting, the blows, the threats. Because I thought, maybe one day he'd change. Maybe I could be a mother to Jamil, but he never let me. And Jamil, he saw me only as an outsider. Maybe even as the woman who took his real mom's place. Her hands gripped her dupatta tightly. The night he divorced me, it wasn't sudden. It was just the final nail. He'd humiliated me in front of Jamil, accused me of things I never did. And then, just like that, I was discarded. I swallowed hard. But why involve me? Because you're not like him, she said softly. Because you showed me kindness when I had none. And because I wanted Sardar Sahib to feel the pain of losing control. She stood up and walked to the cupboard. From it, she pulled out another envelope. This is the rest of your money for your mom's treatment. I took it slowly, still overwhelmed. You planned all this? No, she replied. I reacted. Maybe it wasn't the right way, but it was the only way I knew to reclaim myself. I stood up. What now? You're free to go. I won't ask you to stay. I won't demand anything. Just don't give me the divorce yet. Let him suffer. Let him know I'm not his property anymore. As I left the room, I felt two things growing inside me. One was sorrow, for the years she endured, unloved and unseen. The other was anger, not at her, at the man who forced her to fight back this way. I didn't go home straight away. I wandered the empty streets of our neighborhood for what felt like hours. The early morning sun was rising, but inside me, it felt like night hadn't ended. I had just witnessed a lifetime's worth of sorrow behind one closed door. I should have felt relief. My partner's story was done, but all I felt was weight. When I finally stepped into our house, Mom noticed instantly that something wasn't right. She had that motherly instinct. No words needed. You look pale, she said. Is everything okay? I nodded, lied, said I hadn't slept well. She offered to make breakfast, but I told her I needed to rest. For the next few days, I tried to live like nothing had changed. I took care of Mom, helped around the house, even returned to my part-time job. But every night when I lay down, I couldn't stop hearing Nafisa Begum's voice, couldn't unsee the bruises behind her strength. And then one evening, there was a knock at our door. I opened it. It was him, Sardar Sahib. He wasn't wearing his usual arrogance. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes sunken, his expression tense. You're the boy, he said. The one she married. I didn't reply. He stepped closer. You think this is a game? My hands curled into fists. You divorced her. You told her to do halala. What did you expect? His face turned red. She was never meant to actually go through with it. I almost laughed. You humiliated her, broke her spirit, and now you're surprised she took control? He pointed a finger at me. You think you've won something? I don't want anything, I snapped. You're the one who lost. A woman like her deserved better long ago. He stepped back, shaking with rage. I want you to divorce her. Right now. Why? I asked. Because now the idea of her being someone else's wife actually hurts? Or because you finally realized what you threw away? He didn't answer. Too late, I said. I saw. She's not yours to command anymore. Before he could speak again, my mom came to the door. She looked from him to me and asked calmly, What's going on? He turned without another word and left. I was shaking. My mom pulled me inside. Zohaib, who was that man? I sat down. I couldn't keep it from her anymore. And so I told her everything. From the broken marriage, to the money, to the night I said yes. When I finished, she didn't speak for a while. She just stared at me. Then slowly she said, You married a woman to save my life? I nodded, ashamed. She didn't cry, she didn't shout. She just said one sentence I'll never forget. Then give her the place she deserves. Don't leave her alone. My mother's words echoed in my head for days. Give her the place she deserves. Don't leave her alone. She had said it with no judgment, no anger, just calm acceptance, maybe even grace. I had expected shock, maybe even rejection, but she surprised me, and that shook me more than anything. The next morning, she handed me a cup of tea and sat across from me. Zohaib, this world doesn't see the truth. It only sees headlines. People will talk. They already are. But only you know why you did what you did. I stayed quiet. I've seen women destroyed by men like him, she added softly. And I've seen boys like you forced to become men too soon. But you've done something very few would have the courage to do. Mom, I finally said, I'm scared. She's much older. She's been through so much. And I don't know what I'm supposed to be for her. She smiled gently. You don't need to be anything overnight. Just be kind. Be steady. That's enough to heal someone. Later that week, I returned to Nafisa's house. She looked surprised to see me. You're not here to sign the divorce papers? She asked, almost cautiously. No, I replied. I came to take you home. She stared at me. What are you saying? I took a deep breath. You're still my wife. And I don't want you to be alone anymore. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. You're just a boy, she whispered. No, I said firmly, I'm a man who saw a woman shattered and decided not to walk away. I don't expect anything from you, she said. Not love, not duty. I never asked you to carry this burden. It's not a burden, I replied. Not if I choose it. She covered her face, overcome by emotion, and for the first time, I didn't see her as Jamil's mother or as a victim. I saw her as a person who had fought battles I could never imagine and still stood tall. That evening, I brought her to our home. People stared. Some whispered. Others shook their heads in disgust or confusion. A teenager, bringing home a middle-aged woman as his wife. But my mother stood at the door waiting. She embraced Nafisa warmly. From today, this is your house too, she said. For the first time in years, Nafisa smiled without fear, and in that moment I understood something. Some homes aren't built with bricks and cement. They're built with acceptance, healing, and silent courage. Life didn't magically become perfect overnight. The day I brought Nafisa home, the news spread like wildfire. Our neighborhood, once indifferent, suddenly remembered we existed. Tongues wagged, people whispered, some stared in disbelief. Others laughed behind closed windows. I became that boy who married his friend's mother, and Nafisa became a target of every kind of label: greedy, shameless, desperate. But we said nothing, because silence has a power gossip never will. At home, things were calm, gentle. My mother treated Nafisa with deep respect, more like a sister than a daughter-in-law. They would sit together for hours, stitching clothes for neighbors, sharing tea, speaking in soft tones. Despite their closeness in age, there was an unspoken balance between them: my mother's quiet wisdom and Nafisa's hard-earned resilience. As for me, I returned to my books and my part-time job. Slowly, the hospital bills were paid. Our pantry stayed stocked. For the first time in a long while, the weight on my shoulders began to ease. One night as I returned home, I found Nafisa praying. Her hands raised, her eyes moist, her lips trembling in silent supplication. After she finished, I waited. She looked at me, then smiled faintly. "You gave me a life I never thought I'd have." I sat beside her. "You gave me strength I never thought I had." We didn't need more than that. No grand words, no drama. Just mutual respect, born from hardship. But not everyone was ready to accept peace. One evening, at the corner store, I ran into Sardar Sahib. He looked older, angrier, emptier. "So you're still pretending to be a husband?" he sneered. I didn't respond. He stepped closer. "She's not yours, you hear me? You'll never be the man I was." I looked him in the eye. "You're right," I said calmly. "I'll never be the man you were. And thank God for that." He clenched his fists but didn't strike. Maybe he knew. Maybe he finally saw that I wasn't a scared boy anymore. Back home, I didn't mention the encounter. Instead, I sat with my mother and Nafisa while they stitched a new set of curtains for the living room. They laughed softly at something only they understood. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. The world may never accept what we had done, but we had something far more valuable than public approval: peace. The kind of peace that's born not from perfection, but from surviving the storm and still choosing to build. 6 months passed. Jamil never returned. He never called, never wrote. It was as if he had locked the door on that chapter of his life and thrown away the key. I didn't blame him. He had witnessed too much, too young. And some wounds can't be mended by time alone. But even in his absence, life found a rhythm again. Nafisa no longer flinched at every knock on the door. My mother smiled more often. The home, once full of silences and tension, now echoed with the clinking of teacups, the hum of sewing machines, and soft prayers whispered at dusk. One winter evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Nafisa gently placed her hand on mine and said, "So, Haib, I never wanted to burden your life. I still don't." I looked at her, surprised. "You've never been a burden," I said. "You're the reason I found meaning in all this chaos." She smiled sadly. "People still talk." "Let them," I replied. "They talk because they'll never understand." Then she said something I wasn't expecting. "I'm going to be a mother." The room froze. My mother gasped, placing her hand over her heart, then slowly broke into tears, not of fear but of joy, and I sat in stunned silence, not from shame or confusion, but from a feeling I hadn't known I was capable of: gratitude. A child was coming. A child born not from romance or tradition or planned desire, but from survival, second chances, and something deeper than the world's expectations. Months passed, and Nafisa gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. We named him Sulaiman, after the prophet who was known not only for his wisdom, but for bringing justice and peace. Our tiny house welcomed a new heartbeat, a new reason to fight, to grow, and to stay grounded. I continued my studies, eventually completing my degree. Nafisa and Mom ran a small home-based business, stitching and selling clothes. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and that was everything. To the world, our story may have started in whispers and judgment, but to us, it was a story of resilience, of how broken people can build something beautiful together, not in the absence of pain, but in the face of it. Let the world say what it wants, because we know what we survived and we know what we became.